So as we get into episode 2, Frieren is teaching Fern magic, and in particular long-range attacks. Frieren knows that this is her weakness right now, and so she tells Fern there are 3 important factors to long-range attacks. The first being the mana, the power. Second is when you use that mana, how much force do you have behind it? And the final one is how much control do you have over it? As Fern takes in the information she understands. As we continue, Frieren explains to her, she says, you struggle with gaining mana, and when you have this mana and you use your long-range attacks, she explains it's too weak, and this hints at her not being able to take out the rock. As we move along, the anime showcases them on their journey, and just like student and teacher, Frieren would continue to teach Fern magic, but she wouldn't only be doing that. She also will be hard at work trying to decipher the Green Mirror. She knows if she can figure it out, she'll be able to help Heater the priest live longer as he wished. As we go forth a little bit, Heater the priest would actually ask Frieren how's the training going with Fern. As she explains the good and the bad, suddenly Heater falls to the floor. Frieren is spooked. His health is declining. All of a sudden, Frieren runs to Fern. She tells her, hey, you gotta stop training. Heater is getting sick, you gotta go be by his side. Fern says, no, I can't stop. I have to repay him for what he's done for me. He saved my life. Frieren is taken back. She's like, huh? Suddenly the anime goes to a flashback of when Heater met Fern for the first time. Fern is sad. She looks at a picture of her family, and I'm guessing they died in some horrific accident. And as she's looking over the edge of this rock, it looks as if she's gonna jump. Heater then appears and says, wait, you should live. He then would tell her a story about his friend that passed. He explained that he was a brave man who would never abandon anyone. And the anime will show us that this same exact friend would be the reason why he saved Fern. And as the flashback ends, Heater tells Fern, he says, if you have people to live for, you should never die. Suddenly Fern remembers her parents. As we move forward, the flashback ends and we go to the present time. And as Frieren tries to convince Fern to stop her training, she explains to Frieren why she's training so hard. She tells her that Heater's always feared dying and leaving her alone. And with her knowing that, she says she must hone in a skill so that she can support herself. She knows that this is the only way that she could feel like she repaid her debt to Heater. Frieren must have been touched by her story and says, okay then, keep doing what you do. As we continue along in the story, Fern would take all the skills that Frieren taught her and become a really good mage. And after dedication and practice, she would finally accomplish her goal in destroying the rock. And while Fern's accomplishing her goals, Frieren is hard at work too, trying to decipher the grimoire that Heater gave her. But as we move forward, unfortunately she'll find out that there's no spell for immortality or bringing back the dead. And after giving Heater the bad news, he's not mad, he just accepts it. And after talking with him, Frieren finds out that this all was a ploy by him to take Fern on as her apprentice. He actually tricked her. And as they continue to talk, Frieren would tell him that Fern has actually become a good mage. He then says, good, she won't be in your way. Suddenly, Heater would say, hey, I want you to leave with Fern tonight. He explains that he's getting old and he's finna die. And it'd be better if she doesn't have to experience any pain from loss. Frieren then says, she actually knows that you're dying. And what you should do is offer her a good farewell before you leave. Frieren actually gets emotional and starts crying. And not only that, Fern actually hears the whole conversation while preparing the meal. And before she leaves, she asks Heater, she says, wait, why did you save her? He says, I just wanted to be like him with a hero. It's what he would have done. As Himmel being their late friend, she agrees and says, well, okay, I'm going to do the same thing then. As we move along, Frieren will discover that Fern had actually destroyed the rock. And as she gazes up on this rock, it seems as if Frieren is proud. She doesn't say it, but I think this is the point where she actually accepts Fern as a maid. And not only that, as her apprentice. After the scene, we move along. Frieren and Fern are at the gravesite of Heater. And after reminiscing, they pay their respects and they leave. Going forward, they would start their journey together. And their first task together is doing weird gigs around town. And the funny thing is they don't get paid money. They would actually get paid in strange spells. Fern would grow irritated and ask Frieren, she's like, why do we have to do these weird jobs? Frieren says, it's one of my hobbies. She expresses she loves collecting spells. Continuing along, they would keep going on their journey. And as they pick up another odd job, they would run into an old lady. She says she can't pay them in spells, but she can give them information. And as they're talking, they run into a statue. It's of him with a hero, but the statue is trashed and it's in bad shape. The old woman would say, people around here don't even care for it anymore, and I'm too old to keep up with it. Suddenly, the woman would tell the story of how him with a hero saved their town and got the statue. After giving them the lore, Frieren hilariously says he deserves it. He was nothing but a show-off and he was big-headed. Soon after, Frieren would use her magic and she would clean the statue. The job would be complete. But the lady would suggest that they add flowers. And as Frieren goes to add the flowers, she has a flashback of Himmel. She then says, no, we have to get a particular flower. And this flower would be the blue moon weed flower. It would actually come from Himmel's hometown. But there's a problem. Frieren doesn't know how they look or where they're at. But that would be fine because the elderly lady would give them information on it. And after she would explain the lore, they would find out that they don't grow in this area anymore. And they haven't in a decade. After getting the bad news, Frieren says, well, we'll just have to go on a journey to find them. And that's exactly what they'll do. But after their 6-month journey, they wouldn't find anything. But Frieren doesn't want to stop. But Fern, on the other hand, wants to. She would get so upset, she would go and visit the old lady and she would explain to her that Fern won't quit. She'll keep going on for years and decades. And out of frustration, she says, Frieren has the power to save a lot of people. We shouldn't be wasting our time looking for something that doesn't exist. The old lady would respond and say, you're just so young. And after a little bit more talking to each other, the old lady would suggest that she go talk to Frieren one-on-one. And just before she leaves, she gives Fern a bag of something. And as we go to the next scene, Fern would approach Frieren. She would express her feelings towards the mission they're on. And after, she would pull out the bag that the elderly lady gave her. She would explain that these are seeds similar to the blue moon weed flower. And after suggesting that they plant these seeds instead of the original blue moon flower, Frieren would get the picture. She would say, okay, I'm sorry I made you worry. I'll end the search soon. Fern would then say, yeah, but how long is that? And while they're having a small argument, something crazy happens. A squirrel would come and eat the seeds that Fern had brought from the elderly lady. And as it skirmies away, its footsteps leaves off a blue mysterious mist. Frieren and Fern would follow it. And as they follow it, Fern would ask Frieren, why do you like spells so much? She would say, it's just a hobby. Fern would say, it don't seem like it. Seem like you really like it. Frieren then explains to her why does she like spells so much. She would basically explain that him with a hero once complimented her on her spells, and that's why she likes it so much. After the lore, we would get to the final scene of the anime. And in the midst of them following the squirrel footprints, they arrive at a structure. Frieren then flies to the top of the structure. And as she's flying, suddenly we get a flashback of him with the hero and her talking. And in this scene, Himmel tells her that he wants to show her the blue moon weed flower. And ironic as it seems, Frieren arrives at the top of the structure. And surprisingly, it's a garden of blue moon weed flowers. She's taken back. The beauty of it is so amazing. After the beautiful scene, Frieren would use her magic to sprout blue moon weed flowers around Himmel's statue. And as they gaze up on the statue, the job is completed and the anime ends.